Hello and welcome to this week's Cats Whiskers podcast. My name is Jono Bullard and joining me this week is Mr. Aaron Lord.
Good evening, Jono.
As you may guess, Aaron is on the phone. Unfortunately, a couple of technical issues with internet connections and whatever means that Aaron is talking via the telephone rather than via the internet. So apologies for that at the moment, but hopefully you can hear it loud and clear. And we will carry on and try and have as normal show as possible, won't we, mate?
We'll do our best, mate. Yes, modern technology, hey? Beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Sky Broadband. That's all I can say. Right, I think we'll start off with Saturday night. Panthers against the Sheffield Steelers at the NIC. A 3-2 defeat for the Panthers. Aaron, we really needed to win that game, and unfortunately we came up short.
Yeah, we did, Jono. And I think we came up short in quite a few areas. It wasn't the performance that we needed, and we got punished by Sheffield, and it was disappointing. I thought I found the first period quite boring, to be honest. It was more of a case of both teams not wanting to lose the game than one team going out and saying, we are going to win this game, which is understandable to a certain degree. Obviously it's 3 periods and you can't necessarily win it in the first period, but you could say that you could lose it in the first period. So I kind of partly understand the caginess of the first 20 minutes, but overall it just wasn't a good performance from the Panthers, and we did some good stuff at certain times, but that was more when we had 5-on-5, but unfortunately our special teams weren't up to the level that they needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I felt we just didn't seem to turn up, and one thing that we've said about this Panthers team over the course of the season is how they've always put in a 60-minute shift, but there seemed to be too many players having an off night on Saturday night, and the Steelers took full advantage and skated off to a deserved win. Do you feel that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I do. I think in these games against Sheffield and games against the top sides where it's crucial now that to pick up 2 points, or the bare minimum, take it to OT and see what happens there, and for that it's as a fans we're engrossed in these games, we're bought into them, and we understand how crucial they are. And for me on Saturday night there were kind of too many coasters, too many players just didn't turn up and didn't look like this game actually mattered as much as it really should do. Now people will say players if they get too high with the highs and get emotionally drained into a game, then it could affect the performance, but I just don't think we showed the battling skills and the energy and the passion that actually we did need to see, and that was disappointing because, like you said, I've always felt that the team has played and given their all over 60 minutes, and Saturday night, hand on heart, I don't feel that I could say that they did.
One incident I do want to bring up was after Panthers scored their first goal and Gore Baldwin and Robert Farmer got into a bit of a scrap. From watching the highlights, it seems that Baldwin just seems to clothesline Farmer as he's turning away to celebrate the goal. One thing I can't understand is why didn't Baldwin get a 2+10 instigator?
Well, it's that famous instigator call, isn't it? And this is why a lot of a lot of fans and maybe players as well don't actually like it, because it's not regular, is it? It's used every now and again in incidences like these, but then on other occasions it isn't. And you could obviously kind of see what Baldwin was actually doing and how it turned out that he instigated that fight that piece of play, and it's just infuriating, isn't it, that these calls aren't made on a regular basis, because either that ruling is there and should be used, or scrap it.
So Sheffield equalised through Ben O'Connor at 14:45 in the second period. 30 seconds before the end of second period, and Matty Awar scores a short-handed goal. And I think there's only one word to describe the whole passage of play that led up to that, and that's shambles.
It wasn't our best passage of play, and that's possibly putting it mildly. Very sloppy on our blue line to cough up the puck and to generate that breakaway. Obviously, Matthias Modic comes out, then realises that he's probably not going to get that puck, tries to make his way back to net, and just doesn't have enough time to set himself correctly, and Wah absolutely buries it, and it was a killer blow. And I've kind of seen people say that, Modic, if it was K1, would have came out and took puck and player with him, and I think that's a little bit harsh on Modic, to be honest, because the puck kind of just, it was one of those ones where you can kind of understand why he went for it. Should he have just made that mind up and gone for it, and what would have been, would have been. But at the end of the day, it should have never got to that stage, because we shouldn't have faffed about with it on the blue line like we did. And that was poor play. And to be honest, it kind of was a symbol of our night's performance, and the end result really just not good enough.
Of course, we did equalise in the third period. A great bit of play by Robert Farmer to get the puck across to Jacina to roof it into the net. And at that point, just before that, I was saying I think we might be a beaten side, but then we went and equalised. But of course, the Steelers came back, got a power play, and with 3 minutes 30 seconds to go, Petruska finished the game with a great redirection from a slap shot from point, and 3-2. And I think overall, the Steelers would have been disappointed had they not won the game, because I felt, as much as it pains me to say, they overall were the better side, and I think they deserved the 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that Sheffield played fantastic. I don't think that's the best performance they'll have this season. But at the end of the day, they did enough to get the 2 points in regulation. What I would say is I thought that was an absolutely shambolic call on Brian Schmidt. How they gave it boarding is beyond me, because if anything, you could give it cross-checking. And look, the power play and our PK wasn't great, and Sheffield punished us. It was just, again, I'm going to say a symbol of our performance and the end result. Really, it was just very, very disappointing. But you have to give Sheffield credit. When an opposition isn't playing very well, it's your job to punish them and capitalise on that. And I'm pretty sure they would have been disappointed if it had gone to OT and if they'd maybe only got 1 point out from it. But I think that game would have gone to OT if it wasn't for that call on Smith, personally. And that's the only thing that I would say about the refs on the night. Refs give bad calls and you can have a go at the ref and stuff like that, but it wasn't necessarily the calls that they made, it was what they actually called for. Like I said, they gave that call on Smith as boarding when he wasn't really on the boards. And that's what annoyed me the most. But, at the end of the day, we didn't do enough. And Sheffield did enough to get 2 points in regulation. And it's an absolute hammer blow to our title aspirations.
A question that was brought up by Richard Martin for Ask CWTV. He says, would anyone else have scratched Max Perron for Bruce Graham last Saturday? And I've got to say, I thought Bruce was poor. However, you have to accept he was coming back after a long layoff and probably isn't match fit. Personally, with the benefit of hindsight, I wouldn't have brought him back for that game. I would have still played Perron. So I think I was quite surprised he was the healthy scratch.
Yep, it's quite a good talking point, because I think, Max Perron throws up, some people think he's a benefit to the team, some people think that there's better players out there. A few people will know my feelings regarding Maxime Langlier-Perron.
Yeah, some more than others.
Yeah, very true. Look, I think Max Perron is quite underrated in our team. I think he does, he doesn't score the goals and puts up the points like other players in our team does, but what he does do is he offers that little bit of physicality. He's puts everything in. He's very, very good on our PK, and that's something that suffered on Saturday night. I think the old thing with Bruce Graham is that people still remember the Grand Slam year, and that he has that in his locker. And I guess what we're all hoping is that one day he produces that form again, and that's why you'd put him in your starting roster. But I just think he's had a broken bone in his foot. He's only had a week of training, and that was such a crucial game. Yes, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I think Max Perron can feel quite hard done by that he got cut. And I would have possibly, and this is where coaches live and die by their decisions, and that's what they get paid to do. But, we had a very disappointing weekend the previous weekend, and I think it would have been a perfect opportunity for the coach and the club to say, look, you have got another opportunity here to put right what went wrong the previous weekend. Bruce Graham will be coming back. He'll have 2 weeks, etc., a week and a half of training. Get out there and show everybody and show the fans that, what happened the previous weekend is a blip. And, but at the end of the day, this is why people say spare imports. It's the coach's decision. Like I say, it's what they get paid for. But I would have liked to see Max Perron in that lineup.
Well, to get a Sheffield perspective on things, earlier this week I spoke to the BBC's Seth Bennett, and here's what he had to say about the game. Delighted to welcome to the podcast a man from the BBC, no less. It's Seth Bennett.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to come onto the podcast. Really appreciate it.
No problem, anytime.
So, of course, a big 3-2 win for the Steelers at the NIC on Saturday night. How big a result was that for them?
I think it's huge, mentally, more than anything else for them. I think there was a slight problem that they got in that post-Christmas, start of New Year period, where they started to worry about playing against the likes of Belfast, the likes of Nottingham. Bizarrely, Cardiff are a team that they've actually played pretty well so far this season. So I think all of a sudden you started to look at the top of that table, and the fans were questioning, was there any chance that Sheffield could beat Nottingham at any point? And what Nottingham had done so well is just play simple, good, mean, nasty defensive hockey against the Steelers. And then, on the flip side of that, taking the chances as and when they've come. The power play has been pretty good against Sheffield, and they've created opportunities. And the Steelers went through a spell where just defensively they let themselves down, and then on the other side of the ice they weren't taking the chances when they came their way. And for Sheffield to be effective, and this was always my view from the start of the season, is that they had to be stronger defensively. They had to figure out how to win games 2-1, for example, or 1-0. Because if you don't do that, you ain't going to win a championship. Because at the end of the day, if you have to score 5 goals a night, at some point, somebody's going to figure it out. At some point, you're not going to score the 3 power play goals you need. At some point, your scorers are going to go through a tough patch. And for Sheffield, that tough patch was 5 games, and it was a pretty rotten time if you followed the Sheffield Steelers, and probably pretty good if you're everybody else in the Elite League, as the Steelers went from looking like a really good team to being a team that didn't know who the heck they were.
So going back to that, I mean, I think it was after the 4-1 defeat to the Panthers, the Motor Point back in January, and I remember the podcast that you and Simsy did, and they just seemed to be a real downbeat, downtrodden. It didn't seem that everything was going your way, and everything has seemed to have clicked, and they've gone on a fantastic run where I believe they've won 7 out of the last 8 games. What's caused the turnaround, do you think?
Well, I tried to say this at the time and people weren't buying it. They were unfortunate with the way that the fixtures went, because it was Boxing Day and then the 27th. Then it was back-to-back games in Belfast, followed by a home game against Nottingham after that, my memory serves right. And, you're going to look at that and you're going to think, well, if we win 3 out of those 5, that's a pretty good return. And they had chances to win 4 of those 5 games. I think there was one game they were really poor in, which was the second Panthers game. I think the rest of them, actually, they were in at various different points. And it just didn't, they weren't able to carry it through. And it was those massive great issues where they would concede 3 goals in 90 seconds and go from being 2-0 up to being 3-2 down. And the game was gone, or from being 2-2 to being 5-2 down, And that was the frustration, is there just seemed to be okay, this has got to stop right now. We need to play some hard shifts. We need to go out there and make a statement. And that was the issue I think that they had around that time. And I think that there was a confusion a little bit. They've been short-benched, like Nottingham, pretty much all year long. And so when all of a sudden everybody arrived, and we've seen this before, you've got a full bench to choose from, and then players that have been playing 15 to 20 minutes a night were playing 5 minutes a night, and they were asking to play a role, and they get on the ice and they try and do too much. And then you've got other players that are being asked to play a different role to what they expected when they first got there. Le Gui was kind of being played a little bit out of position. And I just think that there became a confusion as to what each unit was going to be doing. And I think that they didn't know what they were going to do. And all of a sudden, where the goals had dried up from before, they were all kind of looking at one another, and there was nobody saying, yeah, you know what, follow me. I'm going to be the guy that's going to lead you over the line. I'm going to be the guy that's going to lead us through this game. And so they ended up just in this place where they were looking around, and it was like, well, who are we? What do we do? And that was the issue. And the reason why they've been able to re-establish themselves, if you like, was they went back to basics. And, they started to shoot the puck more on the power play. They went to a situation where they kept playing 2 right-handed defensemen together and 2 left-handed defensemen together, to playing a more balanced lineup now. They're getting players in positions where they're going to succeed. And where they top-loaded on line number 1, they've now got a little better spread of scoring as well. I think the other thing as well you'll mention, or that you can mention at this stage, is the fact that when they brought players in, not all of the players did the job that they'd hoped for. And you can probably look at 3 players who came in and disappeared relatively quickly for various different reasons. And I think that you see that, that didn't work out. Petruska's come in and he's not done anything flashy, but he scored the easy goals, if you like, the simple goals, the tap-ins. You look at Le Gui. Le Gui's come in and he's just a shade under a goal every other game. And people are questioning whether he was able to play at Elite League level. I think that probably tells you absolutely everything with regards to that. And I think that, again, bizarrely, and injuries helped them out. The fact that Rod Sarich has gone back to playing on the back end, on the blue line, has just given them just another solid, smart thinking defenseman who, yeah, people will criticise him for the mistakes that he makes at times. But I tell you what, there ain't 2 better defensemen right now in that Sheffield Steelers lineup than Darryl Hay and Rod Sarich. And I think if you look around the Elite League over the last 10 games, and I don't profess to have seen every team, I don't think there will be too many better defensemen than the pair of them over that period of time, because they've been outstanding.
Looking at the title race overall, obviously Braehead losing 3-0 on Saturday to the Cardiff Devils, which was a huge result. Belfast with 2 defeats this weekend to the Coventry Blaze. We've talked a long time about how it's been a 5-horse race. Do you still see it as 5? Because I think Belfast are probably out of it now. 4 or maybe just 2?
No, I'd still see it as being a 4-horse race. I think if Nottingham are still in it, then I think Cardiff is still in it. I think Sheffield in it. I think Braehead is still in it. I think it's within all of those teams to win it or lose it for themselves. I mean, that's the beauty, isn't it? The fact that, and Simsy and I spoke about this on one of the podcasts we did, that you looked at Sheffield's schedule and it's tough. You know, it was toughest of all the teams going through the final 15 to 20 games of the season. However, at the same time, if you're playing Braehead, you're playing Cardiff, you're playing Nottingham, you know that it's in your hands. You know you go out there and you do your job, then you will walk away with the league title. And the exciting bit for me is I'm watching playoff hockey every single night now because they have to play that way. There isn't an option. And that's what's so good for me. I think that that's been one of the beauties that really, since the turn of the year, each team has been having to play playoff hockey. And when they've just slipped a tiny little bit, be that for a 10-minute spell in the game or a 5-minute spell in the game, or whether it's been for a full 60 minutes, then they've had their whatever's handed back to them. And that's how the league should be, shouldn't it? Whether you're playing Edinburgh, or whether you're playing Braehead, or whether you're playing Nottingham, you know, if you don't play up to your top level, then there's a good chance you're going to lose. And I always think it's funny because as supporters, we've often spoken about, we want a league with more parity. What a load of rubbish. The fans don't want parity. You want your team to win night in, night out. Because as soon as you get any kind of parity, what you get is somebody wins one, loses one, wins one, loses one. Everyone's going, oh my goodness, what's going on? What's wrong with the Elite League right now? Everybody, you know, and there's panic stations. But it's what we have to kind of try and get used to as Elite League hockey fans now, is that there are 10 good teams. Okay, there are probably 5 or 6 that are going to spend more money, so that gives them depth and consistency. But on a 1 to 8, there isn't a massive amount of difference between, and I'm saying 1 to 8 in terms of their top performing players. If Edinburgh gets good goaltending and a little bit of scoring, if Dundee gets good goal scoring and a bit of scoring, Fife have been so good on the special teams. You know, all of them can beat you if you're just not quite there, and I think that's fantastic.
Just moving on to obviously what your role within the BBC and broadcasting, and it's about a year ago now since there was a fantastic game live on BBC One on a Saturday afternoon, the Russia against USA Olympic game, which you commentated on, and then of course the gold medal game was also live on the BBC. What sort of reaction did those games have amongst with the BBC and the viewers themselves?
Oh, well, the reaction was good. I mean, we were getting, 4.5, 5 million viewers, something like that, for the USA-Russia game. I think we got slightly more for the women's final than that, and I think the main final was again around 4.5, 5 million. So that's phenomenal numbers. Like whatever people think of how the BBC covered the event, and I think in general we did a pretty decent job. You know, it's having sat there and done it, I can't tell you how hard it is to learn 150 players a day. And I don't care whether they've played in the EIHL and they've been on your TV every single day and you think you know these players. But it's a nightmare. You sit there and you're like going, oh my, you know, there's 4 lines and they're all going hard and the puck's moving so fast and you just... Yeah, I remember lying in bed after maybe day 1 or day 2 of the men's tournament and speaking to my wife on the phone and saying, hey, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get through this. It is so hard. Of course, by day 3, you're seeing teams for the second time. So it gets that little bit easier because, you know, the whole of my broadcasting career, I've always known one of the teams at whatever I've been doing, you know, whether it's been football, whether it's been ice hockey, whether it's been anything else. I've always kind of had one team. So half of my work was already done because at least I recognised somebody. Whereas, you know, here, all of a sudden you're thrown out there, and okay, yeah, the superstars you're able to pick out quite quickly, but you start to look at some of the fourth line players on you know, the Slovak team or on the Czech team or the Slovenian team and the Norwegian team, and you're sitting there doing those games, and you're thinking, God in heaven, we're going to get absolutely smushed here. It's really hard. Also, the other thing is, you think about that audience. You know, how many of those 4.5 million people are British ice hockey fans? Not that many, actually. And an awful lot of those are just NHL fans. So when they're not getting that ESPN versus network type call, NHL network type call, then they're getting mad at you. We took the decision to go with the BBC pronunciation of names rather than the Americanized pronunciation of names. I've never had so much Twitter abuse in all of my life because we called him Kovalchuk, Ilya Kovalchuk, rather than what would they call him? Yeah, exactly, the North American way. And people were just like, "Oh, you idiots! You don't know what you're talking about." And you're just like, "Well, you've obviously never watched a hockey game in your life." It's like, "Well, no, I have. I've watched quite a few, thanks." But yeah, I mean, it brought up its own issues. I would say that the big problem for British ice hockey is if you look at the BBC now, the BBC is showing more live sport, particularly minority sport, than it has done in a long time because of the outlets of the website, the red button, and then various other options amongst all of that. The issue that ice hockey's got is within Britain, it still doesn't sell itself very well. People don't realise that it is, just behind darts, I would imagine, in terms of numbers through the door in terms of indoor sport, but it's there. There are huge numbers that are going to watch games week in, week out. But the other side, it's a rubbish game to watch on TV, really. Unless you really know what the puck's doing, and if you have a really good cameraman that's done loads of work. But most of the time, it's hard. Ice hockey is a hard TV sport. It's a great radio sport, hard TV sport. The other side of it, though, all of the events that they cover, so they're going to do like the Euro Hockey Championships, that's all done with a central feed. So the Euro Hockey Championships will say, and they do this for the EIHL to a degree, where they'll put a feed out there, you then can take that feed and you can put commentary on top of it. You take it in, you book your satellite times, and that's it. It's done and dusted, you broadcast it. I've done it quite a lot with different skiing events. And you sit in a studio, you watch the feed come in, and you commentate on what you see off the screen. And it doesn't, in TV terms, it doesn't cost the BBC an awful amount of money to do that. Ice hockey's a bit more complicated because to do it well, you need to stick in hockey live because some of the rinks aren't, I suppose, set up to have the number of cameras that you need to do it right. And other rinks that maybe are actually make it, you're talking £25,000 a game if you're going to cover a game live. So that's when you realise that the Sky Sports days, if you like, and they're trying to do Premier Sports on, I don't know what it will be, but I would say probably less than a fifth of that number. And that's when you start to realise just how very, very difficult it is. And, it's the interesting thing, isn't it? We're trying to do a bit more with the webcasts in Sheffield. And for me, that's been just a godsend because it means that I'm now able to commentate week in, week out, pretty much. And commentary's like everything else. If you do it on a regular basis, it's a lot easier. And some of the things we're able to do now with one person who's sitting there with one computer, with replays, and we've got multi-cameras now, and the graphics that we're able to put on screen, it's a different world, and that's developing so quickly. And in the end, for me, that's the future for ice hockey on TV, if you like. It's the way that ice hockey will be consumed by ice hockey fans. How you then get that to major broadcasters that's another question. It's unfortunate, really, that BT Sport and Sky have gone down a slightly different route, and they've tried to plough their money into other minority sports which have given them a different kind of market. So if you look at Sky and BT, they were fighting hard over netball. Each of the networks wanted to make sure that they got the only women's only sport, if you like, on and give it some prominence on the network. Netball doesn't come close to ice hockey in terms of atmosphere and fan participation on the game nights, but what they do well with is the number of people that go down to gyms and go to the various different netball courts and play every single night of the week.
Well, fascinating insight, Seth, to the broadcasting world, and
I'm not sure about that. I do ramble on a bit.
But thanks very much for your time. As I said, I really do appreciate it.
Hey, which way is it going to go then, Jono? That's what I want to know. Which way is this Challenge Cup? Are Nottingham going to keep their own trophy, or is it going to go back to its roots in Sheffield?
I would like to think that after winning it 5 times on the trot, It's coming here for a sixth time. We like to think of it as our trophy now.
But it's funny, isn't it? Like, you go back to the early days of the Challenge Cup, and it does seem to have been a bit of a Sheffield and Nottingham fest. However you want to see it, it seems to have been a lot played out between those two teams over the years. And, you know, I'm guessing Coventry have probably won it a couple of times. Belfast, have they won it?
Won it once.
But it has been very much kept between the two teams. And, you know, I suppose for me, the only shame is that it's not a final. It's not going to be the final. And I'm hoping, you know, that having the one-off final is going to make a big difference. I've got to be honest, I want to see this before Christmas. The owners won't make that happen, but for me, if this was before Christmas, and you always have the winners of the first half of the season, you then have the winners of the league, and then you have the playoffs after that, I think that would be a beautiful way for British ice hockey to look back to the past for an answer for the future.
And I completely agree, and I think there's plenty of others who would also agree with you, Seth. Back to the old B&H Cup days, I think that's what we need.
Oh, quite right. Quite right. I'm there. Already I'm there.
Thanks very much for your time, mate. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Seth for his time there. Aaron, Seth mentioned the Challenge Cup as we was ending the interview there, and of course Thursday sees the first leg of the semi-final, Panthers against Sheffield at the Motorpoint, and then next Tuesday the home leg. Sheffield have put a big marker down with winning the last two games in the league. How do you see the Challenge Cup going?
Well, if you'd asked me this question a few weeks ago, I would have said that I think we would have progressed, you know, no problems. I think we're the better side over two legs. But obviously we have to take into account, like you said, that Sheffield have won the last two games. And that's been home and away. So it's a lot closer now than what I thought it would be. I still think if we turn up on the night, we play 5-on-5, I still feel that we're the better hockey team. But realistically, we've got to turn the mini slump that we're in at the moment around, because as everybody will know, this is a cup that means a lot to us. There's other prizes at stake. When you think about the fact that it's a one-legged final in Sheffield, wouldn't it be great to knock Sheffield out so they won't be able to play at their home arena, etc. But realistically, for me, forget about progressing, forget the fact that it's a two-legged tie to a certain degree. We've got to show on Thursday that, like I say, the mini blip that we've just had or we're having stops now, because it can't fester into something much bigger and go on for much longer. It's getting now to the crux of the season, like we've said on previous episodes, and we've got to turn up. And I do think we'll turn it around, but I think it'll be a lot closer than what I initially thought when we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. So it's going to be tight. It'll be interesting.
Question from our old mate Scott Ancliffe. He says Kowalski or Modig for the game on Thursday. Now, for me, I would go Kowalski for this one. Hopefully he's rested after his illness, and he's been in sparkling form since he came back from injury, and I think he has to be the starter on Thursday.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great dilemma, I imagine, because, you know, both are quality netminders. You could say that Modic's kind of dropped off slightly, but he's dropped off the high level that he started and came in with. And I just think maybe for Modic, the fact that, you know, since K-Wall's come back, he's not played a few games and stuff. The rhythm that I imagine a netminder has to get into and get settled and know, you know, that he's playing regularly and stuff has maybe affected Modic slightly. But K-Wall has been there, done it. He understands these situations, and I think if K-Wall is fit at this precise moment in time, he is our number one netminder. So if he is fit, I would go with K-Wall.
Moving on and having a look at the rest of the league, Coventry with 2 fantastic results against Belfast at the weekend. Do you think that's Belfast out of the title race now?
Yes, I do. Yes, if I'm honest, I think the killer was, Ross Cowley's goal on Sunday. I think that just was the final nail in Belfast's league coffin, I'm afraid. It's just inconsistency for me. And look, if I'm totally honest, I think Panthers are in that crucial point now. You just can't afford to lose too many games on the trot. And sadly, pick up no points in that weekend is you just can't do it at the moment. You can't do it at this stage of the season. So if I'm sure Belfast won't admit it, but I think they need to be looking towards the playoff and building rhythm and steam towards getting into that playoff kind of mentality and zone, because it's a great opportunity for the team. But I think realistically, the league's just gone for them.
Of course, Cardiff with a great weekend. They had 3 games in Scotland, losing on penalty shots to Edinburgh on Friday, which was live on Premier, but then a fantastic 3-0 win over Braehead Clan in Braehead on Saturday, and then a 4-2 win over the Dundee Stars on Sunday. So a 5-point return, and that puts them right back in it.
It does. I mean, a crucial weekend. These Scottish weekenders where you end up playing 3 games in 3 nights. Panthers ourselves, we have one in a couple of weeks, and I think the bare minimum that you really need to be looking is 5 out of 6. Obviously, they would have been a little bit gutted with how it started on Friday, but full credit to the Caps with how they performed. But I think the standout of that weekend is really the shutout win in Braehead, because that's a massive marker, and it's pulled them right back into the mix. But again, it's consistency, isn't it? Now, really, you've got to make it. You've got to build on that. And hey, their next league game is against this, so which we'll look ahead to later on. But they've definitely brought themselves back into the mix for sure.
Yeah. So the table at the moment, looking with Braehead still on top, 59 points from 42. Sheffield right on the tails, 58 points from 41 games. Cardiff then third, 56 from 42. Panthers fourth, 54 from 41. And Belfast down in fifth, 52 from 43, and probably out of the title race now. Coventry also coming back into the playoff race. They've taken 8th place and are now 38 points from 43. Hull also on 38 points, but on only 38 games. 2 points behind Fife, who have played 43 games. So the playoff race is starting to look really close.
Yeah, it's we said a few weeks ago that the playoffs, as much as the top of the league has been tight, the playoffs will also be tight as well. And I think obviously Coventry's weekend has been massive for them in that, and look, the confidence that will stand them in good stead for the remainder of the league campaign, to make sure that they actually do get that playoff place. But looking at that small area at the bottom of the playoff zone, why have Hull got so many games in hand on everybody around them? They can really make some ground if they get wins in their game in hand, and I just think.
And they're a team that
such a good.
They're a team who's really come into form.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that, the weekend just gone. And I think, we said when talking about it last week, I believe, that I wouldn't really want to face Hull in the playoffs. And it just amazed me that they've still got so many games in hand on the teams around them, because if they get a couple of wins, then you would think that they'd have to feel that they've cemented that playoff place.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to some other news that came out today, and that's that the Champions Hockey League has awarded 2 places to the Elite League. So after Panthers were just the representatives this season, there'll be 2 Elite League representatives in the competition for the 2015-16 season. Aaron, your thoughts on that?
Obviously, it's very positive for the Elite League. I also think it shows you that how the Panthers performed on and off the ice. Obviously, it was very pleasing for the people involved in the CHL. A lot of people criticise the Panthers and criticise us for accepting that offer and taking it up, but realistically now, with the league that we play in, has been given an extra place on top of the one that we had last season, and the top 5 teams as it stands at the moment have said that they'll all take up the offer if they get in the positions needed. So I think credit to the Panthers and how they acted in it, and it's kind of made everybody stand up and realise that it's not just a competition that it can be sort of written off straight away. I think obviously it's good for the league, and it hopefully again is a building block to making our league bigger and better. So it also means that the title race and the playoffs have got an extra spice to it now as well, doesn't it? So it'll make the remainder of the season very interesting.
Because we had a few CWTV questions which relate to the CHL, mainly from presenters of this show, it has to be said. So Paul Baum has asked if we get into the CHL next season, is there any point throwing money at it like we seem to do this year? Now, my point on that is I don't think we should. I think with 13 imports next season, we should go with our EIHL roster. Maybe look at adding an extra Brit so we can go with 4 lines. And if you look at it this year, we actually beat Hamburg with our normal EIHL roster. So I don't think there's any reason why we shouldn't go with just what would be our normal season team.
On a whole, I kind of agree with that, and I think a lot of people already on Twitter looking at it today kind of thought that, especially with how the CHL group stage is being restructured for next year, with the fact that you've only have 3 teams in a group, so you're going to be, as a club, losing out on one home game against one of the other sides, unlike last season. That obviously that's extra income that you'll be missing. It wouldn't surprise me if a team got a couple of stars or a couple of upgrades on what they potentially might recruit for their Elite League roster. But I don't think you'll see the likes of what you saw for Panthers originally, where we went out and signed, the several CHL contract players. I do think it will be mainly based around your Elite League roster. And look, I think every season, teams are trying to improve their Elite League roster to get these European players in anyway. So it'll be another lure for them to come to the clubs that have entered it. So I still expect us to throw some money at it. Would it be on the same level as what it was this season? Then no, I don't think it would be.
Yeah. Andy Aywood, who of course our regular co-presenter, but he unfortunately can't join us tonight, but he says, will other teams that enter the CHL from the Elite League adopt a similar recruitment plan to Panthers this year, or will they just recruit for the Elite League season and see how it goes? And I think they will, to be honest, especially with it only reducing to a 4-game group stage.
Well, look, I think I saw today, I saw Freddie Black tweet the actual dates for the CHL, and you're talking, around the 20th of August for the first group game or something. So teams whoever the 2 teams that make it, they're going to have to recruit early. And look, people said that was a downside to the team that we signed this year, is the fact that usually you recruit a little bit later for the Elite League because players obviously get offers over the summer and they wait to see how those offers pan out, and that sometimes people think means that you get a higher quality of player later on. But the two teams that enter the CHL are going to have to get their recruitment early, and it's a tough one for me, because I think you have to go with the theory of that whatever you're recruiting for the CHL and the Elite League. So you're having to sell that to the player that you're looking to sign. So they'll have to get the job done early. And I just think that, for me, the CHL will be growing around Europe. So players will understand that it starts earlier, which would mean that they'll know that they'll get the offer, and the offer will be for the Elite League and the CHL. So it will be interesting to see how other teams go about recruiting for the CHL, because Panthers did get a bit of stick for how we recruited so early, and the players that meant that we signed.
One final question that we've had this week comes from Clantastic, who's one of our regular contributors to this part of the show, and he asks, when corruption allegations, example match fixing, are made, should the league defend itself, or is silence the best policy? Now, I would like to have a go at this one first.
By all means, shoot away, Jonathan.
I think I know what I obviously know what he's talking about is some allegations that came out last Friday. Now, if those allegations are being made, then I would hope there's evidence to back that up, and if there is evidence available, that it's taken to the correct authorities. As far as the league is concerned, from the question itself, until those allegations are made and until the proper authorities have the evidence, if it's available, then I think the league are absolutely right to stay tight-lipped on it.
Yeah, I think obviously this kind of talk is never pretty in any sport. You've seen it in other sports, and it doesn't help the image of the sport. And I think if the league responded to any type of incident or allegation, whatever that allegation was made on, then it would be a long job for them. So I think, obviously, like you said, until it's kind of brought to them through the correct channels, then I don't really see why they would comment on it personally.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks for sending your questions in once again. If you want to send a question to us, then do so via Twitter. It is at CatsWhiskersTV, and use the hashtag AskCWTV. We're going to finish by looking ahead to Panthers. 2 games coming up in the Elite League this weekend, both Erdart Conference games. And on Saturday, they take on Cardiff Devils at the NIC with a 7 p.m. face-off. Aaron, Cardiff in some great form lately. It's not going to be an easy game in the slightest.
No, it's not at all. Obviously, like you've just said, they're in some really good form and picking 5 points out of 6 in their Scottish weekender. And we've lost the 3 league games on the bounce now. So it's not going to be easy. But if we've got any hope of being in the title race, then it's got to be 2 points on Saturday. I think if we don't pick up those 2 points, then I think our league challenge is over, and that's really how big it is. It doesn't really get much bigger.
Have you been writing for the website?
Yeah. Look, I think we need to stay out of the box. We need to make sure that our PK is a little bit better than what it has been in the previous couple of games, and our power play desperately needs an injection of something, because it's kind of gone off the boil. So it'll be interesting, because Cardiff, earlier on in the season, we've kind of put them to the sword at the NIC, but we might have got some good results against them in the last couple of games, but they've also caused us a lot of problems. And one of their things, I think, is that they lost their discipline. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach the game with their physicality, with their mentality as well. So it's a crucial game for both teams as well.
Do you think Cardiff are out of it if Panthers get the victory?
It's tough, but if you wanted me to give you an answer, then I would say yes. Purely because we have a game in hand on them as well. So if that game in hand was to go successfully for us, then a gap would appear. And it's getting to that point now where I hate to say it, but Paddy from A View from the Bridges is going to be correct, and it's just third our conference teams taking points off each other, and somebody's got to not pick up the full points. So I think realistically, whoever doesn't pick up the points on Saturday will have a major struggle on their hands.
Of course, another game that we have on Sunday is Coventry at the Sky Dome, a 5:15 face-off there, and that hasn't been a happy hunting ground for us this season. Only one regulation win, a regulation win to the Blaze, and of course they also have 2 shootout victories to their name as well. So again, we have to go in there and get a result.
Yeah, it's... I've not really enjoyed my last 2 visits to the Sky Dome, if I'm honest. They've kind of worked us out when we go into that building. And look, they're coming off again another fantastic weekend, so they'll be right up to this game. It's another tough one. We keep on saying it and we repeat it for every game, but especially we need to find a way to get a win in the Sky Dome, which we've struggled with of late.
Even if we fail on Saturday night, or if we don't win the game on Saturday night, we still really need to go in there and try and get the win, because if we are realistically out of the title race by Saturday, we then need to start building momentum for the playoffs and for the Challenge Cup as well.
Yep, we do, and we also need to, with the news that came out today of potentially second place being awarded, for the Champions Hockey League, that, there's still something up for grabs, even if the title and the first spot is out of grabs. Stand up and be counted. This is what it is for this weekend. We've had disappointment. We've been in a blip, like I said earlier on. Now let's show everybody that we can be the side that, went 10 games or 10 games unbeaten earlier on in the season. It's about building momentum now. It's the kind of talking's got to stop, and action has to play out. And it's tough. That I'm sure there's other easier games, but look, if we're serious about whether it be the league, the Challenge Cup, or the playoffs, about getting a trophy at the end of the season and qualifying for the Champions Hockey League again, then we need to start, putting in better performances than what we've had of recent, and we need to start picking points.
Okay, mate. Well, I think we will leave it there. Thanks very much. It's not been the easiest one tonight, has it, mate?
It's not, to be honest, to say that, we've been trying to record this for the last 3 hours. So, I hope everybody, I know it's not obviously our usual standard. Some people will say that, what, standard for us? But, I hope that, they've still managed to enjoy the podcast, and it was worthwhile doing. So, it's been interesting. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. Thanks a lot, mate.
No problems, mate. Anytime.
So there you have it. Many thanks to Aaron for sticking with us, and many thanks to you for sticking with us through the podcast. Sorry about the technical issues. Unfortunately, beyond my control, internet problems at my end, but, as we always say, the show must go on, and it certainly did. Many thanks to Seth Bennett as well for joining us. Really appreciate the time he put in, and thanks to you for listening as always. We will be back next week, but until then, have a great week, and we'll speak to you next week. Goodbye.